Hey everybody, I'm Lisa, the Holistic Groomer with more great tips for a naturally healthy dog. And today I'm going to share with you my recipe, my slow cooker recipe for lamb stew. Look at that, gorgeous. Your dog will love it. Now, before I get into the recipe, and you don't have to worry about catching all the ingredients here because I'm going to include the written out recipe in the description box, but I do want to mention that this is a holistic channel. I am an energy healer and a holistic feeder and a holistic groomer, and you will not find complete balanced meals here as a general rule because I do not believe in them. I have been cooking for my dogs for probably 35 years, started out as a raw feeder and then went to cooking. My sister as well used to breed Greater Swiss Mountain Dogs, champion dogs, 150-pound dogs that lived 15 years. I had a 104-pound German Shepherd who lived to be 16, had perfect health until the day he passed. My dogs go to the vet every year for a health check, and pretty much that's it. Okay? Same with my husband and myself. Now, whole foods are what we promote, and there's a reason why you will not find synthetic supplements in my recipes because I do not believe in them. If you're gonna go down that road, you may as well just feed the stuff from the pet store, from a bag or a can. And here's why they need to add the synthetic vitamins and minerals. First of all, because they have to get the balanced and complete because they're telling you that this is the food, the only food your dog should eat every single day at every meal. So, of course, it has to be balanced and complete because he's not getting anything else. Balance happens over time. You do not eat complete and balanced meals every day. You don't figure out the nutrients and get everything you need at every meal or even every day. It's balance over time. That's the way we eat. That's the way animals in nature eat. That is the way you should be feeding. Okay? Variety and whole, natural, fresh foods will get you there. Synthetic vitamins and minerals have to be added by these pet food companies because, all right, and I don't want to be bashing all pet food companies because we finally, thanks to channels like this, that more people are learning what's in those foods and they're starting to question them, and pet food companies are listening, and there's a lot of great companies now putting out some really good quality foods that are using human grade ingredients. They're cooking in small batches. The bags are smaller, right? And of course, they're extremely expensive. So you may as well cook for your dog and get away from the idea that they have to have a complete balanced nutrient profile. You don't need a computer program to figure out how to cook for your dog, because first of all, if you're going to try to get every nutrient into every meal, you're going to need that computer program just to figure it out, and you're probably going to scrap the whole thing and go back to kibble anyway. You'll be so frustrated. But also, if you have a picky dog, like I have two of them now, if you put too many different things in there and supplements, they won't even eat it. So then you're going to end up throwing it away, and then you're really going to be upset. So don't do it. But the traditional industrial food, pet food manufacturers, right? Those foods that you see in the grocery store. They're buying bulk foods. They're buying 3D meats, dead, disease, dying. They're buying rancid grains and moldy vegetables and restaurant grease to add the flavor so the dogs will eat it. They add colors and things because otherwise it would be gray, and that's for us, not the dog. But still, they go through great lengths just to get the dogs to eat it, and then they have to add all these things to make sure the stool is firm, and that it's a bag of science. It's not a bag of nature, right? So after look at it this way: you go to the grocery store, you buy whole fresh foods. You bring it home, you put it in the refrigerator, you cook it in a timely manner, you feed it to yourself, you feed it to your dog. It still has a lot of nutrition in it. The foods that they're buying for these cheap dog foods, and many of them aren't cheap, so I need another word for that, but whatever. A lot of these pet food companies are, already nutrient compromised, okay? There's already very little nutrient left in those old, rancid foods. And then after it goes to the extruding plant, it gets cooked 3 or 4 times, high heat, high pressure. There's really nothing left. They have to add all the synthetic vitamins and minerals. It's kind of like feeding cardboard with a vitamin supplement added to it. That's the way I look at it. And I'm just not going there. So that is why I promote cooking for your dogs. And if you're going to be worried about complete and balanced at every meal, it's just not going to happen. So you're better off starting to cook, get comfortable with it, add it to the dog's kibble, replace a portion of the dog's kibble with the whole fresh foods, and wean yourself off of it. It's really a security blanket, I think, for so many people. And, obviously, if a company is saying this is the only food you have to ever feed to your dog, and this is the only thing they should eat every day, well, then it has to be complete and balanced because they're not getting anything else. But that is not a healthy way for you to live or for your pet to live. And also, I'm an energy healer, and I know that energy healing has no side effects, and your body knows what to do with energy as opposed to pharmaceutical drugs, which, sometimes we need, yes. But you want to keep that to a minimum. You want to stick with natural things like energy healing and whole fresh foods. That's my outlook. Okay, so that's what you're going to get here on this channel. Supplements. When I speak of supplements, I'm speaking of whole foods. I'm speaking of fish oils and culinary oils and seeds and herbs and calcium from eggshell and bone meal and seaweeds. I have a great seaweed video coming up. And yes, you can buy some whole food supplements, Canine Complete. I do sometimes add this. This is the pumpkin. They also have a fish. My dogs already eat a lot of fish, and they get salmon oil in their probiotic smoothie every morning. That's another video that's coming up. But yes, you can even buy some whole food supplements that don't have any synthetic vitamins and minerals added. That's what you want. So for this recipe here, I made this in the slow cooker. I cooked it for 8 hours because of all the bone. But if you don't use any neck bones or any meat with bones, you could cook it for 6 hours. If you're only using lean ground meat, you could probably cook it for 4. You want to check it, and you'll know when it's all coming together, when everything kind of, as you can see, there's going to be a lot of vegetable. There is a lot of vegetable in here, but you're going to see just how much vegetable is in this when I read you the recipe. You don't see it, and that's because of the slow cooking, which preserves all the nutrients, but it brings it all together. For example, I sometimes just, have salmon, right? I have salmon, I have sweet potatoes, some cooked that I mash up, some broccoli left over, that has no salt added, right? And I might just poach a little salmon, and that's dinner for the dogs. Well, they're very good at picking the vegetable out of that. So that's one of the things I love about slow cooking. And also my baked recipes, it becomes like a meatloaf, and they can't pick anything out of it. So, all right, so what did I use for this recipe? I used 1 pound of 90% lean ground lamb, 1.5 pounds of meaty pork neck bones, 3 pounds of meaty lamb neck bones. And contrary to popular belief, when you use bone in the cooking and when you maybe use bone broth for the liquid, you still have to add calcium. Contrary to popular belief, as I started to say, bone broth does not supply all the calcium your dog needs. They have a high calcium requirement, which is why, wild canids eat bone in the first place, right? They need a lot of calcium, more than we do. And you really have to add it. And in this recipe, I added my eggshell powder. Sometimes I use Now Foods bone meal, all right? Okay, I want to just mention fat too. When you buy neck bones and like roasts with bone, especially because of the marrow is fatty, but there's going to be fat in there that you really can't cut away, unlike, the lean ground meat. So I don't add oil when I use these fattier cuts of meat, and I also let it cool before I feed it, and then the fat, I put it in the refrigerator after it's cool and still in the crock pot. I have 3 refrigerators in this house. Yeah, marry a retired chef, and you have 2 kitchens, and 3 refrigerators and 3 freezers and everything else. But anyway, so, you know, and the fat solidifies, it rises to the top. I scrape it off, throw it in the garbage. Okay, so what else is in here? I just mentioned the meat. I added a can of Goya low-salt chickpeas, rinsed. That gave me about 1.5 cups of beans. Beans boost the fiber and protein levels and add density in body, making the dish less soupy. As you can see, this is like a meaty kind of canned food consistency that, you know, the dogs love that. I used a cup of chopped cauliflower, fresh. You can also use frozen. I used 1 12-ounce bag of frozen organic butternut squash. I used a cup of chopped zucchini and a cup of chopped collard greens. Now, you can replace your collards with kale or spinach. Spinach is high in oxalates, though. You don't want to feed it at every meal, not to yourself either. You should rotate your greens. You should rotate between collards, kale, and spinach. Also, I want to mention that butternut squash is lower in starch and sugar than sweet potato. All right, they both have different nutrient profiles. So you can look that up online if you want to know exactly what's in each one. But if you're looking for lower sugar, lower starch for dogs that need to lose weight and cancer patients, or just to prevent cancer, swapping out your sweet potato for butternut squash is a great thing to do. Okay, and then this has some grain in it. I don't put grain in most of my recipes, well, probably half of them, but when I do add grain, it's always a whole grain. This has millet. This has half a cup of dried millet. You can replace that with brown rice or oats. You can also replace it with quinoa. I use a lot of quinoa, which is not even a grain at all. It's a seed. That's why it's so high in protein, and it's great for low-carb diets as well. Herbs. Okay, I always add herbs. They boost the nutrients significantly. They're little nutrient powerhouses, but they also add a lot of flavor. And this recipe, I used a teaspoon each of dried thyme and dried parsley. I buy organic just because, and you know, I don't want it irradiated, and I don't want it, it's so nutrient dense, and you use such a small amount that, you know, buy organic. Seriously. Okay, so speaking of herbs, the general rule of thumb is 1 tablespoon of chopped fresh is equivalent to 1 teaspoon of dried, all right? And a 20-pound dog can have a teaspoon of dried parsley, for example, every day, all right? Or that's, I'm sorry, let me say it again. A teaspoon of dried parsley per 20 pounds of body weight. I think that's an easier way of looking at that. I already mentioned in another video the difference between curly and flat leaf parsley. Curly parsley has a milder flavor and it's less nutrient dense, so a lot of people prefer to use it in their dog food recipes. We never buy curly parsley, only flat leaf, so that's what they always get. You can use water, but I used 2 cups of my homemade duck stock. Start making stock for your dog's chicken stock. Inexpensive, easy to make. Make it in your slow cooker, make it in your Instapot. I have an Instapot now, so I'll be sharing some Instapot dog food recipes in the near future once I figure out how to use it. And you will save a lot of money making your own stocks and bone broths. Yes, you can buy them, but they are very expensive. All right, and the homemade is so much yummier anything I put my homemade stock in, the dogs just love it. I also added a teaspoon of organic raw apple cider vinegar, which I always add when I use bones in my recipes because it draws out the minerals, but it also balances the acidity level of the food, and that's probably why dogs love vinegar. And at the end, I added 2.5 teaspoons of eggshell powder that I make. If you want to use bone meal, you're going to add 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of bone meal as opposed to the 2.5 teaspoons of eggshell powder. I only use Now Foods bone meal. They do test for heavy metals, and every bone meal brand has different levels of calcium and other minerals, so you really need to know, what you're getting. I only ever use Now Foods. All right, so your general proportions when you make dog food should be 40% protein, 30 to 40% vegetable, no more than 10% starchy vegetable, like sweet potatoes or rice. And 2 to 4% fiber, very important. That's included in your vegetables and grains that you use. You can also add a natural supplement for fiber, like psyllium husk, which I do put in some of my recipes when the dogs just need, like when their stool starts looking a bit soft, maybe, I want to firm it up. And then fat should be 8 to 20%, 8 to 20%. Now that's a wide range, right? That's because working canines and people who seriously train every day in agility, or dogs herding, right? I used to have Australian Kelpies. We used to do herding. We used to do agility. Those dogs were getting a serious exercise, right? And they were eating 20% fat. Okay, Hazel and Oliver get 10%. Figure about 10% for the average dog. And just because you have a husky, don't give it 20% fat unless it's training for the Iditarod. I'm telling you, I've met people in my grooming business of 42 years. I have, and we always talk about feeding and nutrition, right? And yes, I've met people who just because they have a husky, they're feeding more fat. And no, but the husky's laying on the couch all day watching the TV. All right, okay, so my daily estimate for Hazel and Oliver is 40% protein with no more than 10% starch, 10% fat, and 40% carbohydrate in primarily the form of vegetable and whole grains. Okay, so you're looking at pretty much, when you're cooking, you're looking at equal parts meat and vegetable, with only 10% grain or starchy vegetable and or 10% starchy grain or vegetable, and 10% fat. All right, so fiber is very important. Fiber plays a crucial role in maintaining your dog's digestive health by promoting regular bowel movements, preventing constipation, and supporting the growth of beneficial gut bacteria. A high fiber diet can help to regulate the pH levels in the gut, reduce inflammation, and prevent the overgrowth of harmful bacteria. It also slows down the digestion of carbohydrate, preventing insulin resistance and blood sugar spikes. Again, important for diabetic dogs. Yes, a diet rich in fiber will support the health of the gut lining, reducing the risk of leaky gut syndrome and other digestive disorders. All right, so like I said, 2 to 4% fiber. I am including 2 links in the description box along with the recipe. One is for high fiber whole foods and the other is for high fiber vegetables. So check out your fiber content. Okay, so yes, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching as usual. Now go and cook for your dog. Bye everybody.